Hello and welcome to another edition of the Archeryshack Shop Talk podcast. I'm Jeremy.
I'm TJ.
And we're glad you're with us today. We're here to talk about all things archery, bow hunting, whatever we can talk about. We got questions, we got answers, we got cameras rolling, and me and TJ both are not wearing any pants.
Yep.
So, one thing I was thinking about talking about was the different types of arrow rests, pros and cons of each. So let's start there. So you got, let's talk about new stuff. So you got like the biscuit around here where we're at. It's almost 50-50. Maybe it's leaning more toward a drop away now.
Yeah.
But it's kind of 50-50 biscuit versus drop away. So the biscuit's simple. You set it square, set it up, it's done. You don't have to worry about your arrow falling out. Good hunting rest. The drop away, a little more, you got to tie in a cord or put it to the limb or whichever one you're shooting and set it up. But again, once it's set, it's pretty much there as long as the cord don't stretch or something.
I know a lot of people are starting to, instead of I've seen, they're starting to transition to a limb driven.
Yeah.
Drop away instead of a cable driven.
I do think when you tie it in the cable, it's tugging just a tiny bit on that cable and it can screw with cam timing and all, but of course we're timing it on the draw board, so we're accounting for that. But,
yep.
The limb driven's easy because you can literally just unhook it and mess with your wrist and hook it right back up without putting stuff through cables and all that. So I think we'll continue to see more and more of that.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But the biscuit's so easy. I remember when it came out and I was like, this thing's junk, I wouldn't shoot this. And like a year later, we'd sold hundreds of them, you know what I mean? And I was like, this thing paper tunes and it works and it only slows the bow down a tiny bit. Maybe this is the way to go.
I think they've come a long way on the biscuit because I remember the first ones,
Yeah.
Now you've got the quick shots where they've got where you easy load.
Yeah, the first ones, in case you didn't know and you're listening, it didn't have a cutout for the arrow to go in. So you had to load it from the back all the way in. And it didn't take long, so we started taking and cutting out little notches ourselves. And then I think a lot of people did that. And about a year later.
And the bristles, now, you've got that little section on the bottom that are a little bit stiffer bristles. When those first come out, you didn't have the different, the little black colored bristles, the stiffest ones on the bottom, and then the brown, softer bristles on top. It was all black, and it was the stiffest bristles.
Yep, agreed. But anyway, I like them all. I like the biscuit. I like drop away. There's a new biscuit out now. I hadn't gotten my hands yet, but it looks different. But I'm sure it'll work. And then when you get into drop aways, it's like, you want a limb driven or cable driven? That's preference. The cable's been around longer. Limb driven really was out, I guess, a couple years ago when Vapor Trail came out with a limb driver. And I remember at first, same way. I guess I'm bad about wanting to just stick to what works, but I was like, this is something new and fancy and we don't need to mess with it. And then I set up a couple of them and was like, man, it don't get much easier than this. So I like them. I like them a lot. Now, when you get into older rests, you had the old prong rest, TM Hunter style, and you could actually mess with the spring tension on it and it would play with a paper tune and it was a ton of adjustment. That's sort of a thing of the past now. We rarely see a prong style rest. The Bow Doodle was popular there for a while.
Yep.
The TM Hunter back in the day. Before that, you had the old flipper rest that just stuck on the riser. But anyway, I guess that's about all we can talk about rest. I like a full containment rest, like the QAD's got the bar over the top so the arrow can't fall out. Most of them now do have something like that.
Yeah, I really like that too.
Somebody mentioned us talking about bow cases and the types and what they cost and hold and all that. So I put that down to talk about. I used to be a hardcore, hard bow case man, but recently, in the past few years, I've really liked the soft bow cases just because it's got all these pockets, and I'm usually just throwing it in the back seat now, that type of thing.
I like, now they've got hybrid cases where they're actually a soft shell with a hard case inside, I guess you can say, Lakewood, Elevation. I know I'm forgetting a couple more out there. I think Plano's got some. Me, I kind of, you know, I've kind of got where I like the soft case, but one thing I invested in was I guess you can say a TSA airline approved case,
Mm-hmm.
just to like go shoot or anything like that. I can put, instead of having a bag, put my clothes in and then my bow cases and everything, I can put my bow in the case, my clothes, everything all in one case.
Yeah.
Now it is kind of cumbersome. It is a little bit bigger, but you don't, for what it takes, the room it takes up,
Yeah.
you're still saving more room by not taking 2 extra bags of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like that aspect of it. Things of elevation. I bought the Jetstream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it. That's a nice case. You know, then they, I guess from the low end up, you know, there's some Plano cases. I think Plano makes them. They have the sale at the Bass Pro every year, and they're like $20, and it works. And then most of your cases kind of fall between the 50 and maybe 120 mark, you know, as far as about any case. And then you got the higher end stuff, the SKBs and all that. You can get up into $300-400, but they got wheels on them, and a gorilla can beat them around, and you know, they not get hurt. So
it just depends on, if you like me, I don't never intend on flying. I'm just that type of person. If I can drive, I'm gonna ride. But you know, depending on if you're gonna be beating and banging around on, you know, some back roads, or you know, you definitely want to invest in a good hard case, good, you know, lining inside, and keep your bow protected. I mean, because you know, back in the day, everybody shot a. Back when I first got in it, my whole rig didn't cost but about $200. So you know, if it bounced around in the back seat or the front seat of the truck, I kind of didn't care. But you know, you start putting $2,000 in a rig now. You know, you want something to protect that investment.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean,
well, and used to would throw the bow in the back of the truck, but now it's more we put them in the back seat or that type. You know, they're not. If I was still going to be riding it in the back of the truck, I'd probably still have a hard case. But
yeah,
I like you say, I like all the pockets, and when we travel, not on the airplane, but like in the truck, we can carry extra stuff in there, and it's pretty nice. But on average, if you spend between $50 and $100, you can get a nice case.
Yeah,
you know? And there's a bunch of them out there now with a bunch of pockets and padding and compartments and all that stuff. But they you know, and you can still get like the double bow SKB. I think they're $300 something maybe, and they're heavy, but they can take a beating.
Yep,
they can take a beating. But they it's just according to what you need. You know, do you need it to be waterproof, or do you need it to be more of a protector from bouncing around, or do you need it to be more of be able to carry a lot of stuff? Another thing I see is people have these black bow cases, leave them in the back of the truck while they're working all day. They bring them in here, and the bow's about 10,000 degrees.
Yep.
That ain't a good idea. Don't leave it in the truck either.
Yeah,
take it in somewhere. Get it out of the sun.
There was one guy brought one in, and I think we'd put a thermometer on it, and it just,
I forgot about that.
The riser was right at 100 degrees.
Yeah,
and
it had cooled off for 15 minutes before we even thought to hit it with that infrared thermometer. So I bet it was at 130, 150
easily.
Next summer we'll have to do that again on some of these bows, but they come in all the time during the summer. You can't hardly touch them, they're so hot. But anyway, don't leave your black bow case in the back of a truck in the hot sun all day, because it's not a good idea.
Yeah,
wax will be just melted off the string. I mean, this is crazy.
Let's see what else we got.
We got some questions in here.
Let's talk about stabilizers.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
You know what? Back when I first started, I shot an old X-ring, little 4 or 6 inch X-ring that felt like it weighed 10,000 pounds on the front of my bow.
I remember I shot several X-rings I remember one was just the dead weight, nothing in it. Then I shot some hydraulic ones, and then the silicone ones came out with like the sand in there. I shot them all.
And
probably still have a couple laying around.
I don't even know where mine are, but you know, from what we've gone, you know, from what we started with, and I've seen some in old stabilizers. They come in on some older bows. They look like a miniature baseball bat, and just almost feel like they're made straight out of lead. And you know, now we've got you know, a 12 and a 10-inch sidebar, you know, that you can run if you run a sidebar at all. And, you know, now we're running sidebars for hunting. You know, back when I started, nobody ever heard of the sidebar, even on the tournament trail side.
Even on, it was funny because they were talking about when that Italian guy won Vegas the other year. He didn't have a sidebar, and they were talking about everybody's going to be on that kick. But yeah, I remember about year 2000, I shot a V-bar just to play with it, but I was like, man, this is so heavy and all. I shot it for about 6 months and took it back off. It was made by Easton at the time. And you could slide the weights back and forth and add weight, but it was old school. And then I didn't mess with a V-bar. Well, I'll take it back. I did have a little sidebar. It was more of a counterbalance, not a bar, on that green Conquest 2 I had, but from Quick Tune, I think. They matched that green. But anyway, so stabilizers, really 90s and 2000s, it was all about getting rubber in them and stuff in them to make them take the jolt out of the bow. But now that bows don't have much of a jolt, it's more about the balance of the bow, you know. And that's why we're shooting sidebars. We got one of those dead center balancing machines. You can play with the sidebar, add weight, move it in, move it out, and it's all ball bearings holding it at the grip. And you can take it and perfectly balance a bow so that, for me, if I balance it in that thing, it's still personal feel, you know what I mean? So if you pull it back and it don't feel right, you still can move your stuff. But for me, if I balance it in the dead center system, I can literally pull my bow back with my eyes closed and open them, and my sight will be sitting dead level. So that's all I need to see. But now it's more of soft rubber stuff on stabilizers and weight, you know what I mean? More for balance than for kick or for vibration. But they still take some out. Yeah.
It's just weird to see the change that from when I started to now. I mean, I guess it's just like with the bows and everything. You know, everybody used to shoot a 40-inch bow out of a tree stand. You know, now we're shooting 28-inch bows, and it's crazy.
I remember when like the SQ2 came out, 31-inch, and I was like, good Lord, and that thing sold like hotcakes. And even before then, the MQ32. But that was the old long riser, I mean, not long, short riser, long limb. And now they're, you know, long risers and little bitty limbs, and it's just so much stuff's changed over the years.
You know, and it's personal preference on everything. I like a little bit longer stabilizer on my hunting setup.
Well, and like me, and I think you too, we're not walking a mile in or stalking or none of that. We just want to make a good shot. So
yeah, now if I had to trek, you know, back when I hunted game management land a good bit, yeah, I wanted a light bow. Yeah. I mean, wanted to go as light as I could because I was, you know, walking a good little piece. And but now, you know, pretty much I don't have to tow the climber anymore. So I can pretty much, if I want to go a little heavy on my rig, I can. So it's kind of a win-win right now, but.
Yeah. Let's talk some questions. I know some were sent in, and we always like to answer y'all. We had some voicemails and some texts and some emails and all this stuff. So what do we got?
You're going to love this one because we actually done this, but it was before the days of containment air arrest. How far will a bow shoot if shot straight up in the air?
That's actually a good question. I know I hadn't done it recently, but I know back in actually right when lighted nocks came out, the cool thing to do was to shoot them up in the air, you know what I mean? And beside my parents' house, there's a big old field, and I would fire it across that field from corner to corner, you know, at about as much of an angle as you could do without it doing anything crazy, and it would go right at 300 yards. Now that was almost 20 years ago, so I mean I hadn't even thought about doing it recently, but
I'd be scared to.
It would. I remember when the Genesis bow came out, a little 20-pound Genesis bow. I walked out the back of Bucks and Bass and pulled it back and shot it up in the air. And that joker, there was a road behind us, but it was 100 yards or more, and it cleared that road. And I about freaked out. I thought, how did that little 20-pound bow push it? But so I guess the answer is 300 plus yards. I mean, you can get into they don't do it around here, but out west they do that. Distance shooting, and they actually have super heavy bows, and they'll lay on the ground with their feet up in the air and let them go, and they go like half a mile or something. I've never really researched it. I just seen a couple videos, but it's something cool to look at. But just a regular compound, 300, 500 yards, and then a crossbow according to, if it's some crazy like a raven or something, shoot it liable to go a good bit further than that. So be careful. Don't shoot the neighbor's cow.
Yeah.
That is not, that's frowned upon.
Yeah. Next one is dangers of a bow.
I guess they're talking about, well, there's a bunch of stuff we could talk about.
Don't draw it back and stick your head in it and let it go. Like
there's that video that y'all probably seen it on Facebook a couple of years ago. Some dude, what was it, his girlfriend couldn't pull it back, and he grabbed it like, watch this, and pulled it back and stuck his head in it, and it let down real quick. But you can, just on regularly shooting, the string can hit your arm and blister it up. I've seen some real bad people hit their arm and blood blisters come up and all that type of thing. The best case scenario, just a bruise, but I've seen that. You got to check for things like your peep being tied in. It could fly out and pop you upside the head or put your eye out. I'm just trying to think of everyday shooting of what to look for, if you got small kids, I see it out here all the time, people shooting, and it kind of scares me. If you're drawed back, make sure that kid's nowhere around them cams, because it could lob off a finger in about 2 seconds. But, and then if you had, say, a cracked limb, the limb could break. I've only seen it one time in person, but I've seen a few pictures online, not so much recently, but like a riser break in half. I mean, this is just oddball stuff that'll never happen, but just everyday shooting, hitting your arm, an arrow could explode. Tell them your story about that.
Man.
We had a bad batch of arrows one time.
I had a guy, this was when the Switchback come out, I think, or the XT.
Yeah.
He was getting ready to go to Ohio like the next morning, and he wanted to get his bow sighted in. So we was, we had a 20-yard range there, so we was trying to get him a 30, because he said all I need is a 20 and a 30. I was like, well, we can't shoot 30 in the shop. I said, but we can get you close. And we done shot probably 15 arrows, and I noticed one kind of hit high left on him. I was like, okay, maybe, didn't think nothing about it. Just, you can get a dozen arrows, and you shoot a dozen arrows, and one of them might, you're going to have a couple that's going to be a little bit off of the other ones. I was like, well, it ain't no big deal. He shot 2 arrows, and he come up with that last arrow, and it sounded like a 22 rifle going off in the building. And all I remember was 8-foot fluorescent light glass just shattering and raining. I dove in behind an old hooter shooter. And so after I looked over at the guy, I said, you all right? And he said, what happened? I was like, don't know, because I know he didn't dry fire it, because I seen him knock the air. That was the first thing. Well, he kind of looked down, he looked at me, and he said, I ain't all right. And he showed me, and probably about 4 inches of the air had broke off and stuck. I don't know if you can see it, but it's stuck in his wrist right here.
Right about where your watch would go.
Yeah. And, this is the first time I seen this. You always hear these horror stories and shot on.
Oh, yeah. I remember I wasn't there. I was off that day, but I was shopping somewhere, and Charlie called and was like, where are you at? Get the hell up here right now. All hell breaking loose. Damn ambulances. the ambulance and pulled up. We got damn arrows and arms and people freaking out and blood. And I was like, oh shit. So I took off up there, but
well, I mean, it really wasn't as bad as everybody made it out to be. It just, it was me, the cash register girl, and Jim and guns.
yeah.
Well, Jim was a retired firefighter, police, so, but it was a little bit more, I think they made it out more than it was. But it kind of, it did freak me out, though, because it was just weird.
And then that's like worst case scenario, once in a blue moon. And that, all we could figure after looking was it just was a bad arrow. You know what I mean? Like it was a brand new arrow.
It was funny.
Just got cut.
Because it broke in 3 different places. And the guy it broke like this much of the air was down at the target. This much air was missing, and then this part right here was what was about that much was stuck in his wrist. So there's, a good 2.5, 3 inch section of air that we don't know, we can't account for. And I'm assuming that's what busted the lights out.
Yeah.
But so that's,
that's worst case scenario. And then, we had a guy blow a bow up out here last year, and then the knock broke. You know what I mean? Check your knocks, check your arrows after you shoot, especially carbon arrows. People just take it for granted now, but it's a woven material, a little crack, and that thing's boom. And hopefully it don't go in your arm, although we've seen some Facebook pictures and stuff that happened before. But check your arrows, flex them, especially if you're shooting a group and they slapping each other, or you hit your buddy's arrow. Check the knock, check the arrow. But that's sort of the worst case scenarios of what can happen. Just, if something ain't right on your bow, it's got a weird feel or creak or whatever,
or have a weird
checked
sound.
Yeah, have it checked out. Always be checking those arrows. What other questions we got?
What damage should I look for if I dry fire my bow?
This poor fella. Hopefully his bow's still intact.
Let's just hope he's asking for a friend.
Yeah. Asking for my friend. We get them come in all the time, and it could be as easy as it gets dry fired and nothing happens at all.
And you just, maybe a derail, you just have to put the string back on the cams, and
you could break the string. Had one in here. Well, we've had several in here this season, but strings broke. It could be at the peep or at the loop or whatever. One scary thing is you dry fire one and if that peep gets loose and flings out, it could pop somebody in the eye. But anyway, things to look for. First thing we look at, A, is the string on it still, and is it in the right track? B, are the limbs okay? And really the only way to do that is really look over it. Sometimes if you're worried about a spot, you can take like a cotton ball or even a Q-tip and kind of run over it and make sure it don't catch any little splinter that's maybe you don't see. And then what we'll do here is put it on the draw board, and we can back up a little bit because there's a rope that goes to it and pull it back, and that's going to put all that stress on the limbs, and do it a couple times. And if it don't, maybe there's a hairline crack we don't see, and after we draw it a few times, it could get worse. Or if it don't, then we're like, all right, let's shoot it. But
well, then we also got to check and see if it might have warped the axle or warped the cam.
And that happens. That happens a lot. Anthony Hughes of the year. It's crazy because there's about 5 of us in the group shooting out here and doing a 3D tournament. And I was sitting 2 foot from where he was shooting. He drew it back, no arrow in it, nobody's seen it, and all of a sudden, pow! And it warped the cams on it, But like you say, it could warp the cams.
Bend axles.
I'd say if you dry fire it, definitely let a shop look at it.
Yeah.
But any of that stuff could end up in a bad day, because you warp a cam and don't catch it, and then you shoot it again, and then it's going to fly apart or, break the cam or whatever. So that stuff is not good. And then, as far if it was me and I dry fired a bow, I'd immediately be changing strings and cables, even if they look good, because all that energy that should have went into the arrow went into them strings and cables and into the limbs. So they're probably stretched, they got a sudden just shock of hundreds of pounds, I'd be changing that real quick.
Yeah.
And it may not look like you need to, but I guarantee you the loops of those things have been compromised
That, and if you peep sight, people, I mean, that's a weak spot with those strands separated and that peep being tied
metal
in.
and everything. Yeah.
So that's, you definitely want to check there. But all in all, if you do dry fire your bow, take it to a shop, let somebody look it over, let them put it in press, put it on draw board.
Yeah.
Better be safe than sorry.
Yeah. Agreed.
How do traditional archers aim? Is a question we had come in.
That's a good one. We need to actually get one of our recurve guys on here. We got a couple recurve guys that are real good around here, but there's a couple answers to that. So the old school, probably what most people do shooting traditional, straight up traditional, is the best way I've been told is it's like throwing a baseball. You know what I mean? You look at where you want the air to go, and your body just, after you shoot enough, automatically knows how to aim it. Like with me, I hardly ever shoot a recurve, but I can go out there for like an hour and probably end up with a softball size or a little bigger group at 20 yards after I shoot a little bit. But once I start changing yardages, I have trouble. That just takes time and practice, which we work on recurves and restring them and that type of thing. I've got a recurve, I never shoot it though. So that's the first answer. The second answer is some people aim with their arrow, and not necessarily down the arrow, but they'll hit an anchor point and they'll cut their arrow to a certain length to where they know when they hit that anchor point, the tip of that arrow pointing at the bullseye will hit the bullseye. Like I know when Shane was shooting a lot, we had a certain length we'd cut his arrows and a certain way I'd set his nocks up, and at 22 yards he was dead on, you know what I mean? And then that's just how he aimed. So he was actually aiming. He wasn't just looking and shooting instinctive. He was aiming. Then the other way is string walking. So some people will tie different little knots down their bowstring, and they'll know pretty much up under the arrow how far to go up or down to account for the yardage, and then they can either instinctively shoot or aim with the tip or that type of thing. So I've seen some of those boys shoot really good because ultimately, instead of adjusting their sight, they're adjusting their finger placement on the string, and then they're aiming with the tip of the arrow. So it gets pretty. But then I never realized this till we started getting all the traditional people out here a couple of years ago. Like the instinctive people don't like the string walkers and all this stuff. So it's just, and then when you get into the tournament side of it, a lot of the local tournaments don't allow string walking because they consider it aiming. So then you get into all kind of different stuff. But that's kind of the answer to it. When I shoot, I just go straight instinctive. I just want to be able to look at what I'm shooting at, hit my anchor point and let it go. And my biggest problem is I want to let it go before I hit my anchor point, but I always want to hit the corner of my mouth and then boom, it's gone. I think when what was that movie that came out with the girl with the recurve?
The Hunger Games.
When the Hunger Games came out, it seemed like we had a surge of people wanting to get into recurve shooting, and there's still a lot of them out there. But anyway, that's the recurve stuff.
Yes.
I was talking to a guy the other day about 3D archery, and he pretty much, we get a lot of these people in here. He was like, I'd like to go shoot these targets with y'all, but y'all keep calling it a tournament. And pretty much he was saying, I'm freaked out because I think a bunch of people's gonna be watching me. And I was like, dude, only at like the top level is that the case. Even at like ASA shoots, there's not like there's a bunch of people watching you, you know what I mean? It's only the pros. And I guess that's what he had seen, was like he was watching Bow Junkie or whatever, and where the shoot-offs are, and he thought everybody had to do that, and I was like, no. So the local stuff, for anybody listening that hadn't shot a 3D tournament, and I've tried to quit calling them tournaments because it freaks people out, but literally there'll be 20, 25 targets. You show up, register, around here it's 15, 20 bucks, cheaper for kids, and you go around with your group of buddies and shoot together, and two of you keep score. And the reason that is to make sure I don't accidentally forget to write down a score, or if I put it in the wrong blank or whatever at the end of the thing, like me and TJ can compare cards. So for Bobby, have you got a 291? Yep, I do. Okay, we're good. And if a lot of times we won't have the same score.
Yeah.
And we'll go down through there and say, well, what'd you get on these targets? And we'll figure out where we screwed up. But
Yep.
anyway, it's more of a good old fun walk around with your buddies thing at all these local shoots. If you do go to, like, say, an ASA shoot, which is sort of the bigger tournament, there'll be like 2,000 people there.
Mm-hmm.
They do split you up and you shoot with people you don't know, but most of the time you're still on the same range with your buddy if you're shooting the same type setup. So you'll pass each other several times, and you're also with 3 or 4 other dudes that are usually just laid back, cool people to talk to, and they don't care. If you shoot the thing in the head, they don't care. It's just fun. But I think most people freak out and won't go to a local tournament because they think it's some big, they're watching you, whatever, and it's absolutely not. You just show up with your buddies, and if you don't have any buddies to shoot with and you just got into archery or whatever, I guarantee you can show up at your local club and tell them, hey, I'm new, and they will put you with some nice folks to show you the ropes or whatever.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're not going to put you with a bunch of...
No, and like Rodney Davis, for example, he shoots tournaments now, and he's like a good shot and all this, but like 5 years ago, he just started shooting, and literally, I don't remember how, I think his brother loaned him a bow to shoot, just a hunting bow, and he was like, I'd like to get in this tournament stuff. He showed up at, it might have been Kiwi. He showed up at a random club and was just pretty much like, I want to see what this is all about. And they put him with some people, and he shot one tournament, and they showed him how to score and how all this works. And then boom, he's like, all right, I'm buying a full rig because I love this.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be scared to get out and shoot at your local club.
And just because, they say 3D tournament, don't think you got to go out and buy a tournament rig, because I mean most every,
I'd say 75 to 80% at each shoot is
a
just bow hunters. Yeah, bow hunter setup, a pin sight or a one pin, nothing fancy.
Yep.
And it's more of a camaraderie thing between the group, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you ain't gonna hit that 12, or let's bet $1 a shot or something like that, versus you shooting against other people,
Yeah.
And at the end, a lot of people won't even turn their scorecards in because they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do, you can kind of see where you place between other people. But anyway, don't be scared to go shoot a 3D tournament. Somebody had talked to me about, I guess it's one of the last things we'll talk about, just 3D targets in general and what they cost. And I think the reason I had wrote it down to talk about was he was saying, I'd like to have 5 or 6 of them at my house. What would that cost? And most people don't realize how expensive they are if you get a decent one.
Yeah.
Now they make $80 and $100 ones, and they work fine for practicing a little bit before hunting season. But if you want one that's going to last for years and has like a good replaceable core, I hate to even throw this name out there, but I am. The Glendale buck is a good practice one, but it's junk. Like, we got one out here, and it's plastic legs. The legs fell off. We've had to epoxy, and I mean, it won't hold up, but it will hold up for a backyard target.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one at the house, same thing. I mean, it's a good idea, because you can take, when you shoot, it's got like a 4-sided,
I like that
part
of it.
in it.
I just wish the legs were beefed up.
Yeah, I mean, you can take that thing, once you shot it out on one side, well, you can take and flip it another way.
Yeah.
And you've got a brand new target face.
Mm-hmm.
So it's...
But I guess just the big two is going to be the Delta McKenzie targets
and Reinhardt.
And
well, now you can throw R&W in there too.
R&W is a close third. But the Reinhardts are the softest material. If I was buying one to last as long as possible, it'd be a Reinhardt.
Mm-hmm.
The Delta McKenzies is what ASA uses. They have the cores. They're super, Reinhardt and Delta McKenzies are going to be expensive. For an average size deer target, coyote, something that size, you're going to pay $300 plus. But you can change that core out. They've got the ASA scoring rings as well as the center 10, 12, whatever you want to call it. So those are the big ones, and then you got the cheaper ones, but I'd say for a backyard target, look to spend $100 or so.
Yeah.
But if you want a good one, $200 or $300. And also, like we got like 50 targets, and when we have a shoot out here, we put out 20 of them. We'll just randomly select 20, and when we have a bunch of shoots in the summer, we'll try to make sure we don't put the same ones out back-to-back shoots and all that type of thing, just to change it up. But we keep them out of the weather and under a barn shed, if you can keep them out, the sun, the UV rays breaks down the outside paint of them or skin or whatever. And then when they get rained on, they get waterlogged and all kind of bad stuff happens. So if you can, I'm not saying don't ever leave them out. I'm just saying, if you know it's going to be a week or 3 before you're going to shoot it, if you can stick it in the shop or the barn or whatever, they'll last a lot longer.
Oh yeah.
Because back in the day, at my parents' house, I think we had 15 or however many it was, and I just left them out. And they lasted probably 1.5, 2 years, but then they just fell apart. Water was in them and it was a mess. But keep them out of the weather and as best you can, or build a shed over them. They even make covers for them, but I never have got into all that.
Yeah, it's, if you're going to spend that much on a target, you're not going to let it sit out and ruin and everything.
Yeah.
And I don't even think Walmart has had any 3D targets, and normally
I hadn't paid attention.
I hadn't either.
I know Academy has like those $80 or $100
shooter bucks. I think
all that stuff. I know a couple people that had them, and they worked, but they didn't work for long. Big chunks would come out of them. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up. I guess we will get off of here and quit talking to y'all, but we appreciate you listening.
Yep.
Once we started these podcasts, we've had bows and arrows and all that stuff get shipped in for us to work on. We really appreciate y'all sending that in. Of course, if you need a bowstring, we sell those, archeryshackstrings.com. We have a text line. If you want to text in a question or topic you want to hear us talk about, it's 843-560-9898. And if we can do anything for you, our shop line, if you want to call and talk to us personally, is 864-735-8484. If there's anything we can do for you, just give us a holler. But we really appreciate y'all listening. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe. We put out, it's just according to the week, but between 1 and 3 videos a week, usually a podcast and maybe a tune-in video or some kind of tip and trick video. So hit that old subscribe button, and we will talk to y'all next time.
Have a good one.
See y'all.